All right, welcome everybody. We are at our first history of typography lecture where we're going to talk about pre-movable type. Let's take a look at visual communication. Visual communication would be early forms of recorded communication where pictures and symbols were put together in a series to form stories, thoughts, ideas to relay everyday life. On the right, you see a pictograph from a European cave. This dates 35,000 BC. It's the earliest recording that we know of a pictograph. It's not the only recording of pictographs that we have. There's other pictographs that have been seen throughout the world. This is the earliest version or earliest findings of a pictograph. My question to you, is this typography? After pictograms, we see ideograms or ideographs come onto the timeline. Now, this can be interchangeable. We first see ideograms around 3000 BC. The earliest recording is the Chinese alphabet, shown here on the right. Is this typography? Next, in visual communication, we see hieroglyphics. Just because of history and I think Hollywood and literature, hieroglyphics have a little bit more popularity. People are a little bit more familiar with what hieroglyphics are. They are a form of writing that uses nearly 1,000 characters, which are also ideograms. So they take those ideograms to form pictures and illustrations. The Egyptians introduced this around 3200 BC. Is this typography? Here is a Festus disc. Was located on Crete. It dates around 1850 BC. Again, an example of ideogram. Is it typography? The Phoenician alphabet. This is the precursor. Let me phrase this right. This is the beginning of what we will see to become our modern day alphabet. So the Phoenicians put together a working alphabet. They derive it from Egyptian hieroglyphs. It comes on the timeline around 1050 BC. Being an alphabet in written form, is this typography? Next, we see the Greeks come on the scene around 800 BC. They take the Phoenician alphabet and the Phoenician language, and they adopt it for themselves. From there, their alphabet is where we pull our modern alphabet. Vowels are introduced into the alphabet for the first time. 7, as opposed to our current 5. Is this typography? The Romans then take the Greek alphabet and they develop it even further. How many characters? How many characters in our modern alphabet? This comes on the scene around 700 BC. Is this typography? I'll jump back to this in just a minute. This is a close-up of the Roman alphabet. Romans gave us the serif. The serif is that ending off of each letter that kind of stretches the the letter out. What do you not see visually? Think about that for a second. I'll come back to it. I want to point out the Rosetta Stone because the Rosetta Stone takes these early forms of communication, script, hieroglyphics, ideograms, and it brings them together and actually becomes a translator. Here on the right, you see pictured the Rosetta Stone. This is in the British Museum. I was fortunate to be able to see this on a trip a couple years ago. It's rather large. It's not complete, unfortunately, and it's also not the only version. They've found other versions of the Rosetta Stone. It wasn't discovered though until 1799. So it wasn't until 1799 that we had a clear translator between these three languages. On the Rosetta Stone, you have three: Egyptian hieroglyphs, Demotic script, and Greek script. They all say the same thing. Is this typography? Going back to the Roman serif alphabet, what do you not see? Of all these representations of communication, whether it be visual communication, written communication, or alphabet, is this typography? Typography is the art and technique of arranging type to make written language legible, readable, and appealing when displayed. All words, letters, symbols, and numbers written alongside the earliest naturalistic drawings by humans may be called typography. So the answer is yes. Everything that we just looked at is typography. Typography is derived from the Greek words typos, which is a form or impression, and graphen, to write. Traces its origin to the first punches and dies used to make seals and currency in ancient times, which ties the concept to printing. For modern culture typically applies typography to printed, published, broadcasted, and reproduced materials. And we'll go into that in our next lecture. So now we're at 732 AD. I don't want to say nothing significant happened with the writing or type, but in 732 AD, it was a turning point. Charlemagne wanted to find a way for scribes to translate the Bible faster. So he himself invents a font face called Carolinian minuscule. What is it? It's our first modern script. What do you see? What do you see here that you don't see here? Charlemagne introduces the lowercase letter. So here's your assignment. On the right, we have an example of an early ideogram. This is the Chiru on a 4th century altar. We see etched into the stone Greek letters, also an ideogram at the top. Your assignment is you need to find a ancient representation of typography that uses either pictographs, ideograms, letters, numbers, or any combination of those. You have to identify the artifact and what form of typography is being used. If it's multiple forms like this one, where we have Greek letters at the bottom and an ideogram at the top, you do need to identify that. More importantly, it has to be before 1040 AD. And we'll get to that in our next lecture as to why it has to be before 1040 AD. And you must reference your material so that I can fact check you. So I will upload this assignment for you. You'll have a week to turn it back into me. In the meantime, be looking for the next lecture, which will go into the next phase of the history of typography.